Beverly Hosford. I'm here with Erin Nitschke, my compadre at the National Federation of Professional Trainers. And we are on Facebook Live, and we're actually both in different locations. NFPT is located in Indiana, and I'm in Montana, and Erin's in Wyoming. If you haven't met us before, we are fitness educators and writers. We do all things that we can to help fitness professionals with their businesses, careers, bodies, whatever they need. And we are here at NFPT Live today. Erin, how are you doing today, my friend?
I am good. I'm really good. It's another super windy day, and it's really annoying. So other than that, yeah, things are good.
Things are good. I feel like a new woman because I was sick last week. And
yeah, that's right.
Whenever I'm sick, I just always tell myself, like, when this is over, you are going to feel amazing.
Yeah, it's cleansing.
Even though I'm not totally over, well, I think I'm over like the virus or whatever, but I've got that aftermath, like the gurgling in the throat and whatnot. Just the body is like still extricating, getting rid of the germs. Like,
yes.
Like there was a massacre inside my body last week, I think. And it's like
a good way to describe it.
Let's escort the whatever is left over from that. So,
yeah.
So I'm still coughing a bit, but boy, I feel like a new woman.
Good.
So today, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. Tell us where you're tuning in from. Say hello. Today we're going to talk about reducing cortisol because last week we talked about cortisol. And let me toss that episode up in the comments real quick for anybody that would like to get a recap. So last week we talked about cortisol, and what is cortisol? Erin, you want to give us a quick recap on this drug or hormone of choice?
Sure. So cortisol is a stress hormone, which is probably one reason why it's always kind of looked down upon as being a bad guy, but it's really not. It's a hormone that we need to be able to effectively manage stress. So without it, for example, even any amount of stress, so say you just skip a meal, you'd pass right out. If your body did not produce cortisol in response to that stress, then you would pass out, you would die. You have to have it to live. So it's not a bad guy. It can be elevated in certain situations, but usually it's in response to an acute stressor. So once that stressor is gone, the body can kind of calm down and return back to its homeostatic level. But when we start to see issues, it's when cortisol is remaining elevated. But it's usually not the cortisol that's the problem. It's like those factors that are contributing to that excess release of cortisol.
Oh, yeah. Good recap. Yeah, and I don't know if we got into this last week, but I wanted to mention that, like you just said, it's cortisol, like it releases and then it stops releasing. And that's what we really want, is to get it to stop releasing when it releases in abundance. Like we need cortisol in the morning to wake up, and we want our cortisol levels to be at a certain level to be able to function. But when it keeps releasing unnecessarily, that's when it's a problem. And then we want to stop that release, and then it might release again. So it can kind of be like this roller coaster of like release and then stop, and then release and then stop. And I think that's like most people or articles that you will hear or read about reducing stress are going to talk about how to stop it, from when it's releasing, how to stop it and how to take breaks from stress. And I feel like that's one way to reduce cortisol, and not even reduce it. You can't actually reduce it, I don't think. You can only stop it in its path and get it to stop releasing. It's kind of like pancreatitis. Pancreatitis is a life-threatening condition where your pancreas starts auto-digesting itself. And I happen to know, unfortunately, from experience, not personally, but very close personally, that the only way to stop pancreatitis is to shut down the body, like basically put it in a coma. And I feel like it's the same kind of thing, such a bad comparison, but it's the same kind of thing with cortisol. Like the only way to really stop cortisol is to like kind of shut down or relax, or really like bring yourself down from that like high place that you've climbed to get the cortisol high. And right. So I think we always, in exercise, we talk about prevention, and then we talk about like cleaning up the mess afterwards. And so we can either prevent cortisol from getting high, or once it's high, let's calm down and stop releasing the cortisol, stop the madness. So, and like you said, cortisol is not a bad thing until it gets into high amounts.
Yeah. Yeah, and cortisol can be a measure or a marker for overtraining. So we can see elevated plasma levels of cortisol in athletes, or even just your recreational athletes that are training and they're overtraining and they're not giving themselves enough rest and they're not maybe cross-training appropriately or they're not recovering appropriately. We can see those elevated levels because that is a stress. Exercise is a stress. It's a positive stress. It's one of those eustress type things, but it can go on the other side and be a distress if we don't find ways to effectively manage the levels that we're participating in.
Yeah, that's a great thing to bring up. And for personal trainers or people that are exercising, that's like the heart of interval training, I think, is you get your heart rate up, you exercise, you tax the body, and then you take a break in between the sets, and then you go back at it again, and you take a break in between the sets. And some people find that to be incredibly effective for losing weight, for boosting energy, for boosting mood. And I guess some people even compare it back to the caveman days when you'd be like running from a lion, then you'd hide and rest, then you'd run from another lion. I try to imagine what that was actually like. But
yeah.
I think that like when we talk about reducing cortisol in a fitness standpoint, at the heart of it is to recognize that exercise temporarily raises cortisol and it actually elevates your stress. But then in the long run, the exercise ought to reduce your stress. And we got in a great conversation last week with one of our viewers about how the exercise she was doing was actually wiping her out or making her feel exhausted. And I don't really believe that exercise should make you feel exhausted. So let's get that one right on the list. You know, exercise is a way to reduce stress and reduce cortisol when it's done in the right amounts and when it's done appropriately for each of us, for our bodies.
Yes, it's got to be enjoyable. Otherwise, it becomes a distress. It's a not necessarily a labor of love. It's just one of those arduous things that, I have to get through it, you know. So yeah, that's another factor, is just making it enjoyable, that joyful movement, and being able to celebrate the fact that your body is doing what it's meant to do, which is move.
Yeah, and then I just think it's so important to take those breaks during exercise or at least afterwards. So when you're done exercising, I think that may be where like stretching evolved from. Stretching is a way to supposedly like calm the body down after. Stretching itself can be a stress too. If it's done to the point where like you're stretching and it hurts, or like you're foam rolling and it hurts, that can continue to evoke that stress response. Because if your body feels threatened, it's going to produce cortisol and be stressed. So the thing is, I think exercise a lot of times counterbalances that cortisol with a dose of serotonin, which is going to be the contrasting hormone that counteracts it. So when you're done with your workout, don't, just like run off to the next thing in your day. And I know you're great at this, Erin, because a lot of times you'll tell me about your cool downs. Cooling down or resting when you're done with exercise for just a few minutes can be super helpful to reduce stress, reduce cortisol, and to make sure that workout really was effective, kind of like sealing the deal. Like you're done with the workout, now take a moment and reflect or breathe or do something, eat a meal, whatever it is to like relax the system. And let me just pull up a few. Myra's here.
Myra.
We're saying hi. Billy's here from headquarters. Gail is with us. So just wanted to say hi.
Hi, Gail.
Other people that are joining us, say hello. Don't be shy. Say hello.
Yeah, we're not going to call on you or anything. So
yeah, we're not going to call on you, but tell us your hi. Tell us hello. So so we're just talking about ways to reduce stress, and we talk about exercise, but exercise can be a double-edged sword in some ways. It's a way to reduce stress.
Yes, it definitely can. And that's an important thing to keep in mind when we're training for clients and for ourselves. If you have a client that doesn't seem to be responding to training, or maybe they've got other stressors going on in their life, and then they have to, make these appointments with you. Yeah, Angie, you're not shy. I just thought.
I'm shy, but I'll say hello. And Irene says, hi, ladies.
Hi, Irene. Nice to have you with us.
I'm going to pull up Myra's comments so that we can get to it here in a second.
Okay. So yeah, that's one thing to keep in mind is very aware of not just the time that you spend with the clients, but what's going on in their outer lives. So those moments during their day that you're not with them. And really as trainers and health professionals, we're not with our clients a whole lot, really. I mean, it's a fraction of the time out of a week that we're with them. So it's important to kind of build that rapport and dig a little deeper and find out like what else is going on in their lives. Because chances are there are these other stressors that maybe they just don't know how to effectively manage because they're running from one thing to the next. It's like literally outrunning the lion every time. Yeah. And so you as a trainer can really help them find some great tactics to be able to implement. And maybe you have to do that at the end of the workout.
Yeah.
Maybe you take them through a guided meditation, or, you prescribe for them or recommend to them that they do, this series of yoga stretches in the morning, like a series of sun salutations or something like that, that can kind of just help offset and get the body into a point of relaxation or ready to tackle the day or ready to sleep really well at night. So being mindful of what's going on with your clients outside of the time they're with you is really important for success.
Yeah, and I love that idea of showing them the way by showing them how important that stress reduction is by doing it, taking that time in the session to show them ways to reduce stress. And before we get to Myra's comment, we will definitely get to it, Myra. I wanted to, because of the way the conversation is going, I wanted to mention that like the ways that we reduce stress could be as different as the way the exercise is enjoyable to different person. Like you exercise in your exercise room in your house to videos that you download from the internet. And my exercise is going out, walking around the neighborhood with my child in the ergo carrier and like doing squats. And so, and we're really good friends, but we have two totally different ways of exercising. And then I know like our friend Myra, she says that, she told me that she does Pilates, like really low key, whereas you like the high intensity. So everybody's form of exercise to reduce that stress is going to be slightly different. And then reducing the stress and cooling down is going to be slightly different. Like if you force someone to meditate and they do not like to meditate, it can be actually counterproductive and stressful to them to be sitting there in silence. And they're like, this is not working for me. So like, I know with a lot of my like fast-paced clients, the ones that like the high energy workouts, at the end I would do a guided visualization with them because their mind is always going and they really just can't just shut down and pay. They don't want to pay me for time that I'm not doing something with them. Like I'm not paying you for the last 5 minutes of the session for us to sit here in silence. Whereas there are people who will pay you just like, I know people, they'll go to yoga, or I used to pay to go to a meditation just so I could sit in silence. So you got to know your client or know yourself, and what is it that's going to how are they going to exercise so it's enjoyable, and how are they going to reduce stress so that they're actually reducing the stress? And I saw Myra had up on her Hurts and Dreams page the other day. She was asking people like, what is it that you can do that calms you down? And I had to like think about that. I was like, well, what do I do that actually reduces my stress? So tell us, if you're, everybody that's watching right now, like I would love to know, how do you currently reduce cortisol or reduce stress? And does it work? Like, because there's things that we think we're supposed to do, like meditate or whatever, but it's like, what actually reduces that stress? Like, I sometimes think that reading before bed reduces stress, but it depends on what I'm reading. Like if I'm reading about exercise or something about fitness, then my stress levels they don't go up, but like I get up.
Yeah, for sure.
Gail says she did a yoga session this morning.
Oh, nice.
Not a yogi, but she likes to mix it up.
Good.
And, Billy says all healing occurs in a relaxed state. Absolutely.
Very true.
Angie says I'm shy, but I'll say hello. Oh, we already put that up. Here we go. I wanted to put up Myra's comment before we continue down. So I'll give you guys some time to tell us, like, what do you do currently to calm yourself down, or tell us what kind of exercise you enjoy.
Yeah.
Myra says, I read somewhere that I think that your muscles can produce cortisol itself. Is that true? It's like,
Well,
Erin's making some faces. Uh-oh.
but no, I'm trying to think about like that mechanism without.
I'm thinking about it too.
Yeah, cortisol is a hormone that it's released from your adrenal glands.
Right.
Those are those cute little triangular organs or glands that sit on top of your one on each kidney. So I don't know specifically like what I would have to have a greater context. I don't know that muscles could produce cortisol. Because muscles really they're not a production, they're not an endocrine or exocrine gland.
Right.
That's going to release those hormones. I mean, they're tissue, they're lean tissue, and they really are fed the sugar. That's what they eat, basically. If you want to think about it that way, that's what they consume in order to be able to do that activity or to make that movement happen. Is that me dinging or is that you, Bev?
I just turned it on. Do not disturb.
Okay. So do you remember where you read about that or like in what context it was?
What does that mean? If muscles released, I'm not really sure what that means. I know I've heard some dinky things about muscles like that. They could store memories. Maybe they can store cortisol. Like maybe cortisol could be held in your muscles, but even that, I'm with the adrenal glands from what I understand, and I'm not sure that the muscles, but I think that muscles could cause the release of cortisol for sure. Like you can try muscle too many times in an overly stressful way, like, for example, carrying a small child around for hours on end, which I can attest to.
Right.
I think that your muscle can get angry enough that and then you feel that pain, and then it causes your brain to feel stressed out, and then it causes the cortisol release. Right. Obviously, there's that cascade of events that can happen. But
I guess on the word cortisol.
The what? Producing?
I'm stuck on that word because they technically don't produce anything but force. Yeah.
No, it's a good one. Yeah, it produces force.
Myra, and then I'll post something what I find in the comment section of this video.
Yeah, she says she was just curious. Thanks, ladies. Here we go. We got some responses. So Gail says, I take my dog for a hike in the mountains. That reduces stress the most. I am with you, Gail.
Mm-hmm.
John says meditation helps reduce my stress. What type of meditation do you do, John? Do you meditate quiet? Do you do visualization? Do you listen to a CD? Irene says, I turn off the TV, not touch my phone, shut down the laptop 30 minutes before I go to bed. I completely disconnect to calm down and reduce cortisol levels. Awesome.
Wow, you are like the model person that we need, like leading, participating in the sleep group. Turn off those electronics.
That is really good. So I'm so glad that our viewers are on board with reducing the cortisol and reducing the stress. And I think the harder side can be trying to help clients with that, and help them figure out how to reduce their stress. Because like you said, Erin, we're not with them most of the day. And so we can give them like this list, of things that we know. Like I know when I'm feeling stressed now, like sometimes I'll tickle my son because laughter is a big one. And seeing him laugh is like the most joyful thing, as you know, like just seeing him giggle and feeling the giggles, like laughter. I feel like laughter and dance are two lost arts, laughing and dancing. So lately I've been putting on Christmas music and like dancing around and being silly. And I got out the Christmas ornaments this weekend and I gave Isaac the jingle bells, and he's been ringing the jingle bells, and we've been dancing. And I think that laughter and dance are such huge stress reducers. And the reason I bring this up is because as a personal trainer, you could do a little dancing in your session. You could put on some music and do a little dancing, or you can try to tell jokes, I guess. But if you're not Erin, it might be hard to have a joke. Erin is like the queen of laughter. Like you can tell a joke or, you know, try to like laugh with your clients. But I feel like as a personal trainer, the more that we can like, or even any type of health professional, the more that we can lead the way and live our life that way and then bring it to the people around us, the more impactful it can be.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned laughter because I think we've gotten ourselves to a point personally and professionally where we take ourselves way too seriously. Everybody's offended about everything. And it's like, we don't ever really take the time to just like chill and just laugh at the humor of it all. Because I tell you what, for me, like having gone through a lot in the last basically like 4 years of my life, if I didn't keep my humor, I would be committed somewhere. I'm sure of it. You know, I mean, I just feel like you've got to find, and it's not even about the silver lining. It's just about the fact that life ebbs and flows. It's like there's high tide and there's low tide, and you can either make that decision to surf the wave or let it crash upon you. And it's not worth it to just stay at the bottom and just be consumed by it. So you got to just laugh at yourself, you know, don't make fun of people, but that's not what my recommendation for people. Just like laugh at the humor of the situation. Like, oh my gosh, seriously, how did I do that? Or how did I miss that? I mean, just don't take yourself so seriously.
Yeah, the laughter. Yes, there's all these mechanisms you can use to reduce stress. But what I want to also mention is the subtle stressors that are in our life that we don't always think about. So I'm reading this book right now. It's called Selfbreak, and it's all about reducing stress for kids. But I feel like the author is very adamant about the parents reducing the stress in their life. Yeah. And the author, Dr. Stuart Shanker, has worked with tens of thousands of families, and he talks about the subtle stressors in our life. Like I know, Erin, this was a big one for you when you had your classroom at this school, but like the bright lights, like the fluorescent lights. Me too. Like when I was a teacher at the community college, those bright fluorescent lights, like I swear they just penetrated me and like made me want to shake. But things he talks in this book about for kids, like he talks about bright lights and like, you know, in the classroom, like too many things going on, too much noise, like noises. Like so when my husband gets my dog these like chew bones or whatever, and I cannot stand noise when the dog is chewing on the you know, like crunch, it's like nails on a chalkboard, and he's always like, just tune it out. And I'm like, I can't tune it out. It's like penetrating my skin at the deeper level. But I love this book because it makes me feel better, because this guy talks about how our environment is overloaded with stimuli, and it shows up in children more than anywhere, you know, and when children when they have too many stressors, like he talks about classrooms and school a lot, and then children act out, and they're acting out because they're so stressed that like they can't control themselves. And the reason I wanted to bring up this book too is he talks about how I guess he doesn't talk about this, but he talks about self-control. And I feel like in the fitness industry, we're all about like people need more self-control. They need willpower. Like they need to, you know, you need willpower to eat right, and you need willpower to exercise more. And we talked about this in our sleep episodes, but like if a person's not rested and they're not feeling like homeostasis, they can't make a good decision about what to eat. They can't make a good decision to go to the gym instead of sit on the couch. Like, and this guy, Stuart Shanker, talks about that, how like people literally, like, and kids, they literally cannot make whatever we call a good decision, or like to sit quietly. You know, mommy and daddy say, sit quietly, like where, I don't know, wherever you're at, say you're at church and you're like, I want you to sit quietly. If the kid is already like, if their stress levels are already here and you're asking them to sit quietly, like they literally cannot sit quietly. And except he talks about this one thing I love about, we eventually freeze. So the kid might eventually sit quietly, but it's because they've totally shut down. Like they totally just can't even handle it. So I wanted to mention that, how like stressors can be subtle. They could be noises, they could be lights, they could be somebody in your life who's like pecking in your ear all the time, or like a client of yours that's dragging you down. So
yeah, a supervisor. It can be anything. And I think that's really important. Yeah, the lights. I remember those days, and I'm like, these lights should just be outlawed. And I feel that way when I go to the doctor. Like, nothing is more unflattering than fluorescent lights. So yes, let's please have everybody put on this goofy gown and let's stand in the lights and let everybody take a look. I mean, it's those things that no wonder blood pressure goes up when you go to the doctor, you know?
Like, yeah, talk about it. Talk about stress. But yeah, there's those subtle things. There's those subtle things. And even, I think even we want to talk about stress reduction, we can talk about food. Like, you know, some of the food that we eat can cause stress inside of our body. But how are you supposed to avoid the food that's stressful if you're already so stressed that you can't even make the right decision? So I feel like what I really wanted to get into at some point today is like, how do we get to the core level of stress and reduce it? Like, you know, so that people can then, because you might be banging your head against the wall trying to get your clients to like do what you're telling them, but they're not going to be able to do it if their stress levels are high.
No, and I think that's where that awareness piece comes in, and finding out, like checking in with your clients and finding out like, okay, what are your stressors? Because I bet you if you ask people, I think you ask anyone, and they're going to say that if you were to ask them the open-ended question or the yes, no, I guess, of like, are you stressed? Do you feel stress? Okay, what kinds of stress? There's your open-ended question. And I bet you that they would have to stop and think about it, but they're very quick to say, yes, I'm stressed, but then to not really know what is it that's stressing you. You know, I think some people just, it's maybe an unconscious sort of pressure that they experience, but they don't really sit down and kind of break it apart like, oh, okay, so yeah, that is really annoying when I crawl into bed and all I can hear is my dog licking himself. That stresses me out. Like, to not be able to really identify those things. So I think that's the first part, is finding out, like helping your clients tune into themselves and figure out what are my major stressors. And chances are people are going to say, you know, work, finance, maybe for some it's the commute. Maybe if you live in larger areas, you know, that can be a major stressor. Raising kids can be a stressor. And then what are those subtle stresses? And maybe it's about helping them take a look at the environment that's around them at home. You know, there's something to be said for chi and getting your energy right. You kind of have to get the mind right before you can get the body right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think as a personal trainer, you can definitely help people take a look at what's going on at home beyond their grocery list and their closet, like their pantry, like,
right.
But like even something as silly as like having too bright of lights in the kitchen in the morning can, like, you know, like we have dimmers in our kitchen, which is like so amazing, because in the morning it just gradually bring that light up, especially with these darker days. But like, I've been in hotels or places where like you turn on the light and it's like, whoa, and it's just like headlights in your face. So things as subtle as that can make someone make a bad decision about what to eat for breakfast, because, you know, or they wake up in the morning and their partner is like, you know, being mean to them, or I don't know, whatever. So it's like, yeah. And I think if you ask people candidly, they generally know what it is that's the problem, but sometimes they may not. You may need to list out for them like some other things that might be, you know, causing that stress.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got some comments here. Oh, John got back to us. He counts 10 breaths and starts over.
Good.
John wants to know, does consuming fast carbs post-workout lower cortisol? So getting carbs in right after you work out.
Like those high glycemic, I guess maybe in an indirect way. It'd be nice to find a research article on that. So I'm going to jot that down as one of my to-dos as well, John. But when you refuel, the whole point of a post-workout meal is to restore any glycogen that's been depleted. Yeah. And so the recommendation is often to get some kind of carb with some kind of protein. That the marrying of the carbs and protein seems to be the best in terms of refueling and replenishing. So if your body is not refueled, then I could see that cortisol would remain elevated. I could see that being maybe an indirect cause, but as far as cause and effect, I don't think that, you know, if you were to take in this or that, if it's going to like directly. I think it's all about the mechanism of getting the body back to its homeostatic balance. It's a happy place, if you will. But that's a great question, John.
Yeah, and we know that when we don't eat, our body produces cortisol to help with sugar regulation. So definitely making sure you eat after you work out, making sure you're hydrated, again, getting that little bit of recovery time after workout, all these play in. And Billy's question kind of goes along with this. And I want to circle back again and say that I don't think we can actually lower cortisol. Myra and I were talking about this. It's not about lowering it. It's about stopping the production. So it's not like you can like take a magic pill and make cortisol go down, or you can meditate your way to lower cortisol. All you can do is stop the cycle, like basically just break that cycle. And I think that's actually what the name of this book is, Break the Stress Cycle. Yeah. So basically, and I mean, he hasn't talked about that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does. But I don't think you can actually lower cortisol. So anyway, before I go on and on about that, you can recommend, I think food, you don't want to eat foods that are going to keep raising your cortisol. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. So yeah, you're absolutely right. With cortisol, it's a process. It's a system. So the body experiences something, the body responds, and it's a hormonal response and a nervous system response. And it's that fight or flight. And so depending on what that stressor is, the body's going to respond in a certain way. So Billy, I actually did write an article on stress busting foods, and it's actually in an infographic now. So I will post that. But yeah, the whole crux of it is like looking for foods that are, like berries are a great food because they have very good antioxidant properties. Believe it or not, like dark chocolate, anything with like really good fats that are naturally occurring in the food, anything that's got intrinsic versus extrinsic sugars. So by that, I mean those sugars that naturally occur in a food. So we're talking like your fruits, those types of products versus the extrinsic sugar products that are those products that have had sugar added to them in their manufacturing or processing. So anything like that's going to lower, stress, but we all respond to foods differently. But I'll post that infographic in the comments of this video when we're done.
Yeah, that's a good point too, Erin, about the fact that there are foods that lower oxidative stress, or that or just basically antioxidants, anti-inflammatory foods like flaxseed or fish oil. Yeah, those anti-inflammatory foods are definitely gonna reduce the stress in your body in that way. Let's see, we've got a rowdy audience today. I like it.
I love it.
Said, is it a myth that warm milk before bed helps you calm down and sleep, or herbal tea, non-caffeinated?
Not a myth. Not really a myth. Now, I think we can overgeneralize that statement because it might not work for everybody. So the thing with that is before bed, like, yeah, it can have, like, dairy can have some very calming properties to it, and herbal teas as well, like things like dandelion tea or, some kind of like chamomile tea. That's a really great, I mean, chamomile as an herb itself has calming properties anyway. You marry that with maybe like a chamomile and lavender tea, it can be very calming on the system. But you have to think too, if you don't cut off liquids at a certain point, then your sleep might be disrupted too.
Yeah.
No, it's really not a myth. Those are good options.
Yeah, I think I cannot have liquid before bed, or then I'm up peeing in the middle of the night, and then I'm stressed about that because I hate getting out of bed, especially in the winter.
When it's cold,
right? Wake up and you're like, no. It's like, adult diapers, anyone? Can I get some
exactly.
That's great. Angie says, purposeful deep breathing helps me with stress. Meditation, I agree, is great too, but sometimes it stresses me out that I can't turn my brain off to meditate. Yes, I think purposeful is key. You have to go into it committing to take the time to concentrate on it, breathing or meditating or anything. Tell yourself you're purposely going to do it and go and for a purpose. So Angie, if shutting your brain down doesn't work, which that's what I found with a lot of my, I guess you call them type A or high achiever clients, I found that doing something a little more active relaxation works better. Like I know Myra mentioned on her page the other day that her daughter likes to do art to calm down, doing art. So it's like you're still doing something, but it's bringing that nervous system down. So Angie, I'd be curious Billy's so cute. Hugging helps me lower stress. Angie, patting Bill. Aw. Those are the people that run our company, NFPT. Brings me tears to my eyes.
Don't start crying, because then I'll cry and then my stress level will go up.
Give somebody a hug. Yeah, physical touch, hugging, those other forms of cool. Thanks, Gail says. You're welcome. Physical touch, hugging, touching someone, rubbing their back, scratching their head. Definitely.
Hugging has a really interesting mechanism of action. It really actually helps kind of suppress that fight or flight, that sympathetic nervous system. So when they make gravity blankets and also like thunder shirts for dogs. So anxiety is a stress. Generalized anxiety disorder is a major stress. And so sometimes just that like tight, that closeness with someone, like giving someone a hug, will calm them down because it's got a different mechanism of action. It suppresses that sympathetic nervous system that's really trying to be amped up, and because there's a worry or there's a stress or there's a threat of some kind. So hugging is not only is it like an expression of love and friendship and comfort, but it has an actual scientific benefit to it.
Yeah, I believe it. I know that when I've had some tough days with my little guy, sometimes going in the car for a ride to the store, I notice calms him down. I think just because he's strapped in, he feels that pressure. And then on those days, I don't, I'll wear him in the Ergo Baby when we're at the store, because I think just being up against me and feeling, we know that with babies, that when they hear mom's voice, like calms them down. And then I've got to mention one of my favorite books, which is The 5 Love Languages, because
I love that. Yeah.
I think love in general is a stress reducer, and everyone receives love differently. Some people like physical touch, some people like to get gifts, some people like a verbal affirmation. I wrote an article a few years ago for the Idea Journal, I think it was the Idea Journal, about knowing your client's love language and then giving them love and reducing their stress in the way that resonates with them. So some clients might like a high five, or, a hug may or may not be appropriate depending on the person, but like a high five or a handshake or a pat on the back. Other clients might like to get a gift, like get a little resistance band or something when they've done a good job. And those kind of things can really reduce stress and increase endorphins. And that's the important thing to remember. At the end of the day, when we're trying to reduce stress, we're actually just trying to increase serotonin, increase endorphin. So what can you do to lift your client's spirits and elevate those feel-good chemicals aside from the obvious exercise that they're coming to see you for?
Right. Yeah, I love that book. And then the other one, and I'll post a link to it in the comments because I don't have it right here with me, but it's called Conquest of Mind. And it goes back to that whole meditation. So it popped into my head when Angie made that comment about, having a difficult time shutting down her brain. I'm in that exact same boat. I have to work really hard to do that. And it's just, I'm always thinking, I'm always like, I need to reply to this person, or, this student asked this question. It's just, that's who I am. And it's really kind of obnoxious to me a lot of times. But the book is all about how you conquer the mind. So instead of letting the mind control you, you control your mind, you control your thoughts. And there's some really awesome techniques in there that I think, and it's a fast read. And it's really interesting too. I love kind of the beautiful way that the author writes. It's not so much like a how-to. It's almost like his own journey to figuring this stuff out. And so getting himself to a point where he is not upsettable. So he is centered. And like, if you're quick to anger, then that means there's something that's not right inside of you.
Yeah.
About like conquering that mind, because the mind is, like I said, you got to get the mind right before you can get the body right. It's just.
Yeah. Myra said that a while ago. I forgot to put it up. You need to get the mind right before you can get the body right. Oh, she was repeating what you said. Okay. Got it.
Got it. Thanks, Myra.
I'm here. I swear.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you're saying is a lot about what this author talks about in Selfbreak. He talks about how we've got to, we've got to quiet all the noise down. If you're feeling angry, or like he talks about kids in this book, but he says, like, whenever a kid is upset, ask why now. He says, ask why now? Why is the kid having a tantrum right now? What is going on? Is there something in the environment? Have they not eaten? And these are things that you learn right away when you have a newborn, is to ask all those questions. Like, are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they, not getting enough love? Are they not getting enough hugs? Whatever. So I think there's a lot of depths to this stress thing. It goes deeper than what meets the eye. It's not just about meditating or whatever. It can be about really tapping in and figuring out, what are these deeper stressors? What are the things, and it's not always about adding stress reducing stuff, like adding lavender, adding tea. Sometimes it's about taking away. Like, what can you take away from your day? What can you take away from your environment to just bring the stress down without adding more? Because like Angie said, adding meditation in can be a stressor in and of itself.
Yes. So very true. I think that is such a salient point, is what can you take away? What can you reduce? So sometimes it's not just about reducing the stress, it's reducing the amount of things we commit ourselves to. So, I think one of the things that you learn very quickly as a parent is you gotta let stuff go. There will be times when I have, laundry in the dryer and it's been there for 4 days. And you know what? I make no apologies, because my kid is happy. She's fed, she's growing, and she's destroying things that she probably shouldn't destroy. But nonetheless, she's thriving and she's well. Who gives a crap if the towels are in the dryer? Now, if they're wet and moldy, that's one thing. Mine are at least dry. Okay, mine are at least dry. But yeah, it's like you gotta let some things go, and I think you gotta get to a point where you're okay with it. You kind of have to get to an acceptance point, I think, and becoming a parent for me has truly made me see, wow, I don't really need to worry about dusting today. Really, it's not that important. It's not that critical. Like, there are other things to survival. Like, is there food in the fridge? Does she have enough milk? Is she running a fever? Those types of things. So I think there's just like this whole worldview shift that you go through. So I think that's to be said for people that don't yet have kids. What can you let go? What can you breathe in and think breathe out and think go, and be okay with it?
Absolutely. I love it. The laundry thing. Like, there's some days where I'm like feeling the pressure of the laundry, and I'm like, wait, does Isaac have enough pajamas, or does he have a pair of pajamas to wear tonight? And I'm like, he does. Don't need to do any laundry tonight. And then the next day I'm like, oh, the pajamas are still clean. We can go one more day. Like, we like put these things in our head on ourselves that we think we need to do all the time. And you're so right. Like, and letting go. I feel like, especially with these days, we have 2 more weeks, guys, of the days getting shorter. 2 more weeks. What can you let go of with the daylight? Let go of, and I would love to hear that before we go today. Like, great, we've got all these stress-reducing strategies, but what are we going to let go of before the year is over? What is something that you do repeatedly all day long that you don't need to be doing? Or what is something that you put on yourself that you don't need to put on yourself? So if you want to share that with us before you go, mine's going to be laundry for sure. I think we're just going to wear some clothes with oatmeal on them.
Yeah, life happens and no one's going to care. I mean, I can't promise if you stop over at my house, I'm going to, be fully dressed. Like, whatever. Love me or don't, that's your decision. Whatever. Let it go. I promise I will always have warm tea for you, but I can't promise I'll be put together. Sorry.
That's great. So, April says, yes, let stuff go. Learning that saying no to things is really okay. And Billy says, laughter is a great stress reliever. Yes, which we are indulging in some laughter right now. So if anybody else wants to share with us, like, what you want to let go of and put it out there, we'd love to hear. I think we're wrapping up here. Angie says, totally agree, Aaron. Let it go, let it go. It's like that.
Frozen.
The kids grow up too fast, and making sure everything is dusted takes some time to play or create something together. Absolutely. Whenever I'm out with Isaac and the Ergo baby, I run into people who are like, oh, I miss having my kids wearing my kids, like it goes so fast. And every time I hear that, I take it in and I'm like, I'm going to keep wearing him as long as I can because I don't know what that's like to look back and wish you did it more. So I'm like, I'm just going to wear him until I don't want to wear him anymore.
Exactly.
Lydia says we need to be we need to all be way more honest with how much we don't have control over. Amen.
Yes.
Love it.
So true. Such wisdom in our audience comments. I love it.
You guys are great. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think we're going to close out. And I was thinking, Erin, we were talking about next week. I think we should we've been talking about like all these things like sleep, cortisol, stress. We haven't really talked about some of these other hormones like serotonin and Billy wanted us to talk about motivation. So I think next week maybe we'll go the other direction. Like we're heading kind of like the other direction. Like we're talking about all the stuff to let go of and eliminate stress. You guys have got to eliminate the stress though before we can have the motivation and all the feel goods. So
very true.
Let's keep eliminating stress. And when we come back next week, we will have a topic for you probably related to something along those lines. I'm glad you guys could all join us at our new time, 10 o'clock Mountain Time, which is noon on the East Coast, I think, and 9 a.m. on the West Coast. So, and if you guys have any topics you'd like us to tackle in the future, please put them in the comments. Lydia says we cannot be perfect. That's a great thing to close.
I gave up that dream a long time ago. Like,
I'm so glad you said that because we talked about a lot today. And just pick one little thing. Like, what's one small thing you can add into your day to reduce your stress? And what's one small thing that you can take out of your day to reduce stress?
Yes.
So pick one and challenge your clients to it this week. When you're working with clients, tell them the same thing. Say, hey, I would love for you to tell me one thing you could do to reduce stress and one thing you could do like something to eliminate, and that would be a great thing to do before the holidays come and get people thinking about that before this big holiday season crashes down on us.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us today. If you liked this video, please share it. Hit the share button. That's the best gratitude we can get is sharing our words and all of your beautiful comments with people.
Yes.
And I just saw one more comment. Mandy says, chocolate helps me relax. Thanks, Mandy. I think we'll end on that. Chocolate.
Yeah. What better thing to end on? Like, Mandy, I'm totally with you, girl.
And it is happy hour, so I think I'm going to go get some chocolate right now.
Yes, do it.
We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us.
Yep, see you next week.